We're going to talk to Mark, who is calling in from Mississippi. Mark, you're live on Talk Heathen. What's going on?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. It's kind of an interesting situation. I am still a theist, and so I'm on the Facebook discussion groups. On one page, I'm arguing in favor of the resurrection of Jesus, and on another page, I'm arguing with Christian people about abortion. And I'm having a lot more fun arguing against the Christians because they don't understand the Bible as well as I do. And I quote them Exodus 21 and some other passages in Exodus that talk about abortion, and they just get pissed off when you bring it up, and that's a lot of fun. But I used to be an OBGYN, so I have done abortions. I did not do it as a career move. I just did one. I was in the Navy. I did one at a Navy hospital. This girl said she wasn't going to take care of her diabetes, and if the pregnancy was a risk to her, she did not want the pregnancy. So I did a bunch of paperwork so she could have an abortion. And in the end, I decided, well, what's the difference if I do the paperwork versus if I let somebody else do the abortion or I do the abortion? So I ended up manning up and doing the abortion myself. And I've done that. And I've also done some medical abortions as well. But there's a lot of ways you could probably work around it, but you got to be careful because they're really coming down on people. I just think a woman's right to choose is her business, and you can't use a Bible to argue against it.
I agree, Mark. The Bible is very scant in some of its references to abortion, and the ones that do happen there seem to be suspect. For example, there is a verse, I believe it's in Numbers chapter 14, if I'm not mistaken, that seems to describe a priest's ability to give an abortifacient. I believe that's how you say it, right? An abortifacient to some.
That was Numbers 5. It was Numbers 5. I quoted it today.
Numbers 5. There you go. Yes, Numbers 5. Basically, it's a procedure that says, well, if you suspect that your wife is cheating, you can give them this thing, and if they have an abortion, then that confirms that your wife was cheating. Like, I believe that's the context of this verse. Obviously, it doesn't work like that. There's a lot of Mediterranean cultures and really worldwide cultures that have ideas of giving people this thing that causes abortion, but like medically induced abortion has been a thing for a long time. So yeah, Numbers 5:11 through 31. Thanks for that, crew. But yeah, it's obviously happened in these cultures, and Jesus himself doesn't specifically talk about it in any particular capacity. So it's very debatable whether this is even a Christian issue on some level. You also have to consider that abortion is a natural thing. Most conceptions do not go all the way. they end in abortion. And if you wonder about that, when we talk about abortion in this country, what we're really talking about is medically assisted abortion, because abortion happens on its own all the time. So you have to wonder, in a universe where God cares about the individual souls inhabited in every single creature that comes to life, so to say, why it just happens on its own with no particular reason. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, I agree with you, Mark. It's not very good to use the Bible to defend this stuff. There doesn't seem to be a lot of good evidence for that.
Well, what do Christians point to in the Bible to support it? What have you found, Mark? What do Christians point to?
A lot of people were quoting me today on the Christian side, the 10 Commandments, and thou shalt not kill. And I counter them with Psalms 137, verse 8 and 9, where it says, happy is he who dashes their little ones' heads against the rocks, which is talking about the Babylonians. But I'm like, it says thou shalt not kill, but it says you should kill the Babylonian children. This is where my knowledge of the Bible helps me counter the arguments saying that the fetus is human, and it's not.
Yeah. So, if you want to make an argument that a fetus is human, you can't use the Bible. You'd have to go to medical science. And even then, I don't think medical science really, there is no objective definition of what it means to be a human at any given point in that process, right? Like we can talk about systems that are at play. We could talk about when a heartbeat happens or when certain things develop, but like that's the limit of my understanding, at least. I'm not the doctor here, but
at some point you have to put a value of personhood onto the fetus, right? And the question, I think, comes down to when that happens. And I'm curious, Mark, where you would draw the line, because you seem to support abortion rights to a certain extent, but I'm curious as to how far that goes. Like, how late term an abortion would you be comfortable performing or condoning?
Well, I have some things to say about that. Like when somebody has a miscarriage, the general rule of thumb in the hospital is if the fetus is over 20 weeks, the remains are treated like a corpse. They are given to the family, and they are allowed to have a funeral. If it's before 20 weeks, it's considered tissue and goes to pathology for whatever they do to the specimen. And I remember when I was in the Navy, I made a comment about tissue, and all of a sudden I had a chaplain calling me saying there was an allegation that you referred to the fetus as tissue. And I said, well, that's what it is. That's what it is if it's not 20 weeks. So that's where the cutoff is in most hospitals.
But what's the what is the actual reasoning for that line? Because that seems like I don't think there's anything developmentally significant about 20 weeks versus 19 plus 6.
There really is, and it's more of an arbitrary, I think.
Right. So this is why I'm asking you, Mark, because you say that you are Bible believing and that you're also pro-choice, which I think that there needs to be more people like you, the pro-choice aspect. But I'm curious as to how far it goes, because if you really believe that a woman has the right to choose, that means they have the right to choose at any point in the pregnancy. Correct?
Yes, they do. I'm not real, I don't have a strong opinion on where to draw the line. I know when I was stationed in Guam, there was a group that performed abortions, and I was friends with those guys, and they actually invited me to go into their practice, but I just did not want to do it professionally. But I was delivering a baby at Guam Memorial Hospital, and there was a doctor there who had a patient who was pregnant through incest, and she was very late, too late that they could do the abortion in the office. And what he did is an amniocentesis and put a compound in there that stopped the baby's heart. So then he was able to do it at the hospital as a fetal demise. And that's how he got around it.
Interesting.
And then once you get past 20 weeks, you have to deliver it.
I mean, I think it would be interesting to dive even deeper into your specific beliefs on this, although I don't know if we have time for that, Dan. But it's very interesting to hear this perspective from a Christian, because I don't hear that very often.
Yeah, I mean, I from my understanding, MD, I mean, I do hear it from other Christians, but I think they probably say the same thing as Mark, where it's hard to say, the line might be a little bit arbitrary, because either way, I think Mark and I would agree that you can't use the Bible as a reference for this kind of thing, especially for our modern understanding of medical science and what's actually happening in a pregnancy. I to be honest, I couldn't tell you exactly when or when not this line should be drawn. I have to draw to people like you, people who are real experts in this stuff. You know what? I'm an expert on weird conspiracy theories and bullshit on the internet. I'm not an expert on what happens in embryology and what happens in the studies of these fields. I can only quote and refer to the people who have been really studying this for a long time. And ultimately, I think that's what we have to do when we make decisions like this, at least how to make informed decisions like this, right?
Sure. I mean, but I think ultimately you're going to be putting a value onto something, right?
Yeah.
A developmental structure, some functional phenomenon. And to me, you can't discover that through scientific method. You said, it can give you like a more solid foundation, but at some point you sort of have to decide, I don't know, as a society or as an individual or based on your moral code and how you think things ought to be, what is important and what we should value. Yeah. And I think the thing that we should all sort of realize, everyone who's on the pro-choice side of this debate, is the whole human life, human tissue, humanity. The humanity aspect of it is not the critical component, right? Yeah, there's something else. Agree. And I think we have to continue thinking to figure out what that might be that we think deserves protection and rights. But I don't know what it is necessarily, although I have thoughts.
I have thoughts too.
I think it's up for debate.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like a capacity for suffering. But yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, if you look at Exodus 21, and somebody accused me of finding that passage on the internet. I found that in a Bible study it talks about if two men fight and the woman loses her baby, the penalty for that is a fine paid to the father of the baby. It's not a death penalty offense. That clearly makes a distinction between the life of the mother. If the mother dies, it's an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, life for life. Clearly making a distinction between the life of the fetus and the life of the baby. Doesn't give you how many weeks. I know that if you pass 20 weeks, you can't just do a D&C. You actually have to go through a labor process. And those are very hard labors. I've done these when the baby dies, and I've had to deliver the babies, and I hated doing it because it was just
but that line is like a technical line, right? It's like, what does our technology and our methods allow us to do? And presumably you could push that line further back with some like really good neonatologists who might be able to keep, I don't know what the record is, but it's probably around like 16 to 18 weeks that we've had like preterm births that have been able to survive, and completely sort of recover and live normal lives. So like the 20-week thing is still like it's almost becoming outdated at this point, right? Sorry?
Yeah, well, the earliest I had was 22 weeks, and the science at the time when I was doing this was about 24 weeks, and I got a miracle baby, so to speak, in 22.
I've been peripherally involved in some cases that have gone before 20 weeks, but only because it's like, you get the right fetus, the right infant, and the right neonatologist, and the right technology and tools and knowledge and everything. The point is that this 20-week thing that you're talking about, as I think you agree, is sort of arbitrary, and it's just based on what people are generally able to manage.
Yep, I agree. Viability outside the womb has its limits when we're talking about the philosophical line to draw in the sand when it comes to this. But anyway, we do have a lot of people who want to talk to us today. So I'm going to go ahead and end this call here. But Mark, thanks so much for giving us your opinion and your thoughts on this. And good for you for talking to other Christians for something that you believe in on this particular issue. We're definitely in agreement with you there that the Bible isn't a good source to use for this. All that says is you're getting a culture's understanding of the time of what they thought was significant about this, and that's really all we can get.
And it's frankly, Mark, you might have a better chance of changing minds than we will, right? Because you're sort of coming at it from the inside of some of these communities.
Absolutely.
So continue doing your good work.
For sure.